30 miles northeast of Mexico City lies the great ancient city of Teotihuacan. Established back in 100 BCE, the origin of its founders remains uncertain. However, most people believe that it was founded by the Quiquilo people after the city was destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption. Scholars hypothesize that these eruptions had a psychological impact on its inhabitants, with many Quiquilos interpreting the event as a punishment from the gods. This made the Quiquilos want to build a new, harmonious world in order to find favor with the gods again. Hence, Teotihuacan was built. Spanning around 8 square miles, Teotihuacan is the largest ancient city in the Americas. Most people cite the Sun Pyramid as the focal point of the city, standing at over 20 stories tall, with each side stretching out 700 feet. Now, what remains of Teotihuacan today is nearly a shadow of its former glory. In the 8th century, much of the city was destroyed, likely due to an internal uprising. The temperate weather conditions also wore down on the site. However, even in these damaged conditions, the city still holds a lot of its magic. When observing the ancient city, you get a sense that every building was made with a sense of renewal. Referring back to the Quiquilo people, it generally feels as though the city was their chance at redemption with the gods. Now, the story behind Teotihuacan has been an ongoing investigation, with thousands of scholars over the last 700 years working to unravel each piece of its puzzle. One of the most important excavations in recent times was done by Sergio Gomez, who, in 2005, utilized ground-penetrating radar devices to construct a complete map of the site. By using these maps as a guide, archaeologist Saburo Sugiyama was able to excavate the main body of the Sun Pyramid and find sacrificial human remains. This is clearly sacrificial, as the hands and ankles of the skulls were tied up, clearly not wanting to die. Although it once held over 200,000 people, Teotihuacan was mysteriously abandoned sometime in the 8th century, and what happens afterwards is uncertain. Because of this, we really don't know who the descendants of the ancient city are. And so, in terms of who Teotihuacan matters to and who are its stakeholders, we really don't have a clear answer. One of the most shocking discoveries throughout excavations in Teotihuacan is the fact that there was absolutely no signs of a written language. Not one. We know that they were aware of the concept of written language because there is evidence that they traded with the Mayans. But despite this knowledge, it seems that they intentionally decided to avoid adopting a written language. Even today, this remains a very puzzling mystery for scholars. Some believe that they wanted to differentiate themselves from other populations. Others believe that, because there was no centralized ruler, a written language was difficult to enforce. Whatever the reason, we may never know. Because of this, much of what we know about Teotihuacan is built off their art. Although this might seem like a subpar substitution for written documentation, the reality is that we're still able to get an incredible amount of insight into their culture and values through these artworks. For example, the Teotihuacan human sacrifices were recorded through colorful murals, but interestingly enough, these murals never showed the actual sacrifice in action. All we ever get is the aftermath. So instead of seeing people gathered around performing the actual sacrifice, all we see are people holding a blade with hearts on the end of it. This suggests that they dispatched the bodies of the victims as easily as they would dispatch a harvest of fruit, and that they really didn't care much about the actual body being killed. Another example of this is the art that encapsulates the walls of many bulls at Teotihuacan. Initially, archaeologists assumed that these wall arts were created for religious purposes. However, after realizing how unique and personal these wall graffitis appear to be, archaeologists then hypothesized that they were some type of ownership mark. These artworks were indicative of names or nicknames, not religion. They also may have been indicative of personal accomplishments, not the accomplishments of the gods. It's almost more meaningful than the fact that these bull arts were unrelated to religion, almost as if to show that art wasn't optional and that they needed it to be human. I put a lot of thought into thinking what I would want to research at Teotihuacan, but the truth is, there really isn't much more that we could do. The area has already been completely scanned through ground-penetrating radar devices, so we know the intricacies of its caves and pyramids. We've studied the art almost to a point of over-analysis, and once again, there's no written language available that we could use to trace the people to any certain group. So if I were to study Teotihuacan, truthfully, I wouldn't study the actual site. Instead, I would study the land surrounding it. Frankly, the people who left Teotihuacan during the 8th century must have gone somewhere. Perhaps using satellite images to find the clues of immigration would be helpful, or even better, a stratified random sample to dig through the surrounding area. So overall, Teotihuacan largely remains a mystery, but the small bits of information that we have been able to get have been deeply fascinating. Not only were these people able to make amazing buildings from their bare hands, but they were able to do so without a written language. They performed human sacrifices sacrifices, with the emphasis being on the sacrifice, not the sacrificee. Despite their clear religious ties, they still made time for personal art, and they still appreciated their personal accomplishments. And last but not least, sometime in the 8th century, there was an internal uprising that made the people leave, and we still don't know where they ended up going. Truly, Teotihuacan was an enigma, and although I would love for its mysteries to be unlocked, something tells me that it's going to stay like this.